Peter Biophysics, Superfit tree formulas. Been an extraordinary experience to realize after many years of working with the flower formulas and complete harmony, realizing and thinking that this was the ultimate in vibrational formulas of flower essences. It rapidly became very apparent that as people became sicker in the world, that our formulas required more and more complex combinations in order to reach and help people. And it became obvious to me that we had to look further and look deeper. And after a series of extraordinary experiences and dreams, I was led to various parts of the world to make this incredible discovery about the sacred trees. And so I'm going to talk to you about the tree formulas, but I'm also going to tell you a little bit about the story, about how they came about and the travels and the extraordinary adventures that I had in order to accumulate enough energetic property from various trees and plants to create this new range. It was an interesting story and an interesting history as well, because primarily the Superfit tree formulas were created for the horses, for the equine world, realizing that horses, exquisitely beautiful, sacred creatures around the world, were really under huge torment and distress. And so my idea was to create a range of these incredibly powerful formulas for the trees, from the trees for the horses. And interestingly enough, I went to Dubai to meet up with Sheikh Mohammed and his team. And it was very fascinating because they were very badly labeled. They weren't labeled nicely at all. They were labeled in a rather dark, sort of black with gold labels, but they had numbers on them. And I had a discussion with a team of vets and people from the stables. And I said, no, this is the one that you need for this, and this is the one you need for this other experience. And they all got terribly muddled and confused, and they didn't really relate to the formulas at all. And it was actually incredibly sad. And when I came back from Dubai, I had the most, well, extraordinary dream, vision almost, of the 9 guides who stood around me in these beautiful metallic coats, all the colors of the rainbow reflecting off each other and the energy bouncing off their coats. And they said, look, we're not dressed properly. We are here to form the support for mankind, but our clothes are wrong, our coats are wrong, and you need to reevaluate these incredibly important and powerful formulas. And so I suddenly realized that the labels of these formulas were totally, totally wrong, and created with a very clever man these beautiful rainbow coats for our formulas with the Fibonacci code in them. But then realized that we were missing 3 energies: violet, green, and I think, well, silver, which came later. So that was really the origin of the labeling of these beautiful, these beautiful formulas for the support of these noble creatures. But I suddenly thought, no, it's not just for the horses, these are for humanity as well. So that was really the beginning of why we then took a new step forward into creating tree formulas. It became incredibly apparent that these 10 tree formulas were not just the colors of the rainbow, but they were what we would call plexus formulas in Western terminology, or chakra formulas if we were thinking beyond into the ancient mystical philosophies of the colors of the rainbow reflecting through the spine, reflecting through the human body. And so that was really how they started. That was the starting point of these extraordinary formulas. And then from then on, I started to go on my travels. And so I'm now going to put up the PowerPoint so that you can actually see the beauty of these formulas. They're very simple, they're very powerful, and they're very specific, and they should only ever be used on one level at a time. Never use more than 2 tree formulas on the same level. They're too powerful for that. So they have to be used specifically. although they can be combined in the most incredible permutations with flower formulas. So the power of the tree formulas, if you imagine a little daisy and then imagine a beautiful 2,000-year-old tree, the fir cone of a 2,000-year-old pine tree, and then you start to get a concept which is very different in energetic concept with regard to what these trees offer us and the power of what they offer us, the dimension and the vasa quality of the tree formulas penetrating and going on and in. And we therefore call them the spiritual formulas because they work on a very, very interesting level. And fundamentally, although they're not at all for the physical body, they support on such a deep spiritual level that they have the capacity to manifest symptom relief on the physical level very, very quickly. Not because they're treating the physical level, but because they have the capacity to reach the dimension of what we refer to as the relationship between spiritual and degenerative. So when we look at the tree formulas originally, they came about because of this desperate longing to be able to help the animal kingdom, and then realizing that we also needed exactly the same sort of help. So that was the origin of these exquisite, beautiful, beautiful, powerful formulas. The ultimate power of the planet, the exquisite, beautiful, beautiful tree formulas. So starting here, we look at this amazing light shining through the trees. And this is an extraordinarily interesting picture because many people who've seen this picture, and I had it on the wall in my clinic, kept on telling me that they could see the fairy spirits within the trees. And that has actually happened to me often with little children. Sometimes if you look very hard at the flowers, you also can see the little spirits in the flowers. And when I was photographing the flowers, I often found that the energy in my photographs, because I'm not a very good photographer, but the photographs seemed to glow and glisten with a power that was beyond anything that I was capable of achieving. And it was the gift, I think, that I was being given by these amazing, amazing, amazing plants. So the trees. And I went to visit this wonderful place called Mauritius. And I was in the botanical arboretum called, what was it called? Pamplemousse, the Pamplemousse Gardens. And I found this statue. The gift of a useful plant is more precious than the discovery of a gold mine, and a monument more durable than the pyramids. And I was beautifully taken aback by that. And I loved it so much because I utterly believe that this is the truth. The gift of a useful plant is more precious than the discovery of a gold mine, and a monument more durable than the pyramids. That depicts, I think, so powerfully the power of these formulas. Trees, oh my goodness, they are extraordinary. And if you go around the world, I've been fortunate to go to some extremely powerful places and seen in, for example, primary jungle trees that have never been touched by humanity. And they're so exquisite and so powerful and so beautiful and so old. Intriguingly enough, our tree formulas are fundamentally made from acorns and nuts and seeds from very, very old trees. Our first beautiful, beautiful Superfit formula is the rainbow formula. It's called Peak Performance, and it's made from the acorns and the bark from very, very, very old oak tree. In fact, it's considered to be the oldest oak tree in England. What an extraordinarily beautiful tree. You could stand with about 20 people around the base of the tree, and these acorns that are falling from this tree are still producing little seedlings that you can actually see in the grass just underneath the tree. Unbelievable. So that you can imagine that an acorn from a 2,000-year-old tree carries the remedy, the energy of 2,000 years. Superfit peak performance, this beautiful rainbow formula, is for the heart, it's for the cardiovascular system, it's for the governor meridian, the conception meridian. It's a meridian formula, again, for the heart meridian, for the lung meridian. Key word is vitality. It's for neurotransmission. Well, neurotransmission is basically how energy flows around our body and is connected and connects our cells, this energetic field forces. And I suppose if you could regard that in terms of explanation as acupuncture meridians, if you like, the traveling of electrical energy, but much more simple and much easier to understand would be just to be talking about the nervous system and how our cells talk to each other, neurotransmission. Conception, exquisitely important. This moment of our lives when we come into this world as ourselves, me, who am I? What am I all about? I am me. I'm completely and utterly, universally specific to myself. And this is the most extraordinary concept that, yes, humanity is based in situations such as the geometry of the human body, the anatomy and the physiology of the physical body, but it doesn't explain this uniqueness, this spirituality, this absolute ancestral spirituality. And I suppose what we're really trying to explain here is that these formulas almost have the capacity to go back beyond into the concept of our miasm and our inherited imbalances that go back in time into our ancestry for maybe 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, maybe millions of years to create this exquisite, unique person that you are, that I am. I don't know if you ever asked yourself that question, who am I and why am I me? But it's a question that I've asked myself many, many times, especially when I was a little child. I always wanted to know why I was in this world and what life was really all about. So the truth is that this treatment, this formula is very, very important. I was holding a course in, I think it was in Ireland, and one of my practitioners said to me, I want to bring my autistic child to the class. Would that be all right? And I said, yes, no problem at all. We were talking about the trees and this particular formula. They were all in a little row. And this child walked down towards me, came and sat on my lap, stroked my hair, and looked up at me in such a sweet way. And then his eye caught this formula. And he looked at it, and his eyes lit up, and he took it and he put it against his heart. And he said, this is for me. This is for me. And he would not let it go. And a lot of people in the class cried because it was just so profound, because I had been talking about the power of this particular formula and how tremendously important it is. The flow of energy that flushes and flows and travels through our body has a focal point, and the focal point of the energetic flow of energy through the blood, the shui, the qi carried by the shui, is heart center point. Well, heart center point is a very interesting point because it reflects into the physical anatomy of the heart, and it's referred to as the bundle of His. And the bundle of His is literally the controller of our spiritual energy and the way our heart beats. Every aspect of our spirit, our soul, our emotions is manifested in this very extraordinary regulator of the way the heart beats. And this is key, this key formula to support the heart and any condition which affects our soul through lost love, particularly lost love, which affects our heart, is extraordinarily important. And as you can see, Superfit 1 peak performance, our oat formula, correlates and is often used together with flower formula 1, lotus formula, which is our most powerful flower formula for spiritual shock and tragedy and trauma and shocking news and accident and and all the things that are so profoundly complex that hurt us so much, scar and wound us right the way throughout our lives. Flower Formula 2, recovery, the journey of our life, the exquisitely beautiful emotional star, white rose. Flower Formula 10 is called Nicotiana, and it's for the breath of life, breathing. And Flower Formula 11 is hawthorn for heartache. Then we come to our special care formulas. The special care program has been specifically created to support our little autistic children, our children who have been damaged. And the special care treatment is a program to bring, it's a year's program to bring back our little children and to help them form and have a more comfortable and happier life. And then our very powerful Heart Power Formula 1 and Heart Power Formula 4. Now, intriguingly enough, you might think that I'm saying that these formulas would take the place of Superfit 1 peak performance, but not at all, because each of these formulas has something to offer. And we are talking about the chakra formulas, and this exquisitely beautiful formula, not only is it called our rainbow formula, but it's also called our gold formula. Sometimes I ask children what color they love, and they say to me, they love gold. And when I point to this formula, they say, yes, that's gold. As far as I'm concerned, they say, yes, that's the gold one. That's the one I want, which is very, very special. And again, we are faced with some pretty terrible damage to people nowadays. And so what is so lovely and so extraordinary is that we have this ability to offer this level of help through our beautiful, beautiful tree formula. Totally specific and totally on its own. You can dose it, spiritual, really intense, powerful, powerful, one daily, for mental chronicity, twice daily, for emotional, functional, 3 times daily, and finally for physical, 4 times, 5 times, or even 6 times daily when it's needed on a physical, acute, now concept. Again, you can even treat you can treat with 2 tree formulas. You can combine as many of the flower formulas with the tree formula, but you can only treat 1 flower formula on each level. At one stage, I realized that people were becoming so ill that I started to look at this concept of maybe giving people 2 tree formulas, but never on the same level. Always, if one was needed emotionally, functionally, 3 times a day, then I would never give another tree formula at the same time, always at a slightly different time, usually 5 minutes in between. Too powerful to give 2 messages at the same time. You have to respect the fact that these formulas are message formulas. They're telling your patient, your brain, they're telling the person, what to do, how to rebalance themselves, how to bring about a healing process. So extremely beautiful gold peak performance are one of our very, very powerful formulas. So from there, we are going to go on to our next one, if we can. Oops, no, too many. So this is our Superfit 2 Calm. Vibrating on the same frequency as our flower formula 3, which is our ultraviolet formula, and the vibration of Superfit 2 Calm, 380 nanometers, incredibly important energy. This formula is made from the eucalyptus tree, Australia, an extraordinarily beautiful tree. And the very stunning thing about the eucalyptus is it lives in some of the hottest parts and the hottest deserts in the world. Funnily enough, the fruit of the eucalyptus, the seed pod of the eucalyptus tree, is stimulated into growth through fire. What is so extraordinary about the eucalyptus is that it has most interesting healing powers, the eucalyptus. But we use this formula to support massively complex irritation, inflammation for modern society, when people are massively inflamed, damaged by pharmaceutical chemicals, aspartame, all the chemicals in modern society which have conspired to create such complex hyperactivity, ADHD, inflammatory, irritation. And there are many, many chemicals that actually do this, but we've talked a little bit about aspartame as being probably one of the most lethal chemicals on this planet. And it seriously is dangerous. It does cause terrible damage to the brain, the cerebral cortex, the pituitary gland, the spinal cord, the pons varoli, right at the top of the spinal cord. Very, very, very important formula, calm formula. We use it to support little children when they are seriously hyperactive. That is a very, very important aspect of this formula. We use it to support the central nervous system, the pericardium meridian, for peace and relaxation and for calm, as its very name suggests, tranquility and stillness and untroubled thoughts. People are troubled in modern society, and this exquisitely powerful tree formula has a very, very profound, helpful benefit. Interestingly enough, when babies are born to mothers with epidural, there are about 5 pages in the epidural manual of information, medical information manual, referred to as MIMS, which lists the side effects of epidural. One of the epidural side effects is that it crosses the placental barrier and it infects and it disturbs the baby, causing excitation of the central nervous system. That's the expression used in the medical manual. And yet, how many people are ever told that epidural causes this inflammatory response in the baby's brain? Very, very few. Although it's the listed side effects right at the top of the list of side effects, most doctors have no clue. Interestingly enough, epidural is very destructive for many, many, many reasons. If it is life-saving, then of course it's relevant. But if it's just offered a, come on, love, it's now time for your epidural, again, this your epidural and offering this dangerous procedure, which has got many, 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 many side effects, it is actually not as safe as people are led to believe. Interestingly enough, I have met many, many women whose lives have been ruined by this procedure. And you hear so often the carelessness of it. Oh, it didn't work, so I had another one. Or I was put on an epidural drip. Or they had to updose it because, you know, they put it in the wrong place. Well, you know, it didn't work. That raises a flag straight away. It did not work. If you inject a large vial of anesthetic into somebody's spinal cord through the meninges into the epidural space, and it doesn't work, you've got to say, well, where is it? Where has it gone? If it isn't working, why is it not working? It must be somewhere. Now, we know that babies born to mothers whose first epidural did not work, and then they have another one, often end up being very, you know, there's usually an emergency cesarean, to be honest, because everything gets paralyzed, mother goes into a state of complete paralysis, and baby is in very great distress because this drug causes a massive surge of disturbance. It's a chemical that infects and disturbs the pons varoli. I honestly believe that one of the main causes of hyperactivity in children, or ADHD, or all these names, there's hundreds of names now to describe all these different, the same condition, but it's got many multiple names, multiple labels. I think one of the basic culprits, if you like, is this procedure called epidural, as also is the induction drug, oxytocin. Again, this formula vibrates on the frequency of healthy production of oxytocin, And intriguingly enough, oxytocin um, is really responsible. It's called the love hormone, and it's not just responsible for the emotions and the tranquility of the soul, but it is also responsible for calming the sodium pathway, one of the largest electrolyte pathways in the body. And it's for this reason, I think, that so many people in modern society are obese, and children are being, they're very overweight, they're obese. Mothers also suffer with terrible complications and backache, because where you put the epidural also creates a paralysis, usually somewhere between lumbar 1 and lumbar 2, which is a procedure that is actually hideously dangerous and can impair a woman's physical life for very, very many years, if not forever, until it's dealt with. What we've actually found with this formula is it's a glorious antidote to these pharmaceutical chemicals and e-additives and petrochemicals. Petrochemicals, plastics, remember that most children's toys now are made of some form of plastic. Plastic bags, plastic wrap on our food, plastic packaging, plastic this, plastic that. Plastic and the petrochemical industry are very responsible for poisoning our world. And this is one of the most important formulas to literally stabilize the spinal cord and allow a release of these toxins that have paralyzed the central nervous system and caused real spiritual distress. One of the interesting listed side effects of epidural is epilepsy. Many, many children have epileptic fits. And I've got an interesting story to tell. You'll also see flower formula 13 is listed in brackets. We frequently use Superfit Calm with flower formula 13 to support urinary tract, stress-related calming, stress and anxiety, eczema, all these conditions which occur under the influence of stress. And I had a little baby, a boy, who was brought to me in London by very sweet parents. And this little boy just sat on the floor, gnawing away at his hand until it bled, making funny little noises. When he couldn't walk, but he'd sort of shuffle around on his bottom in little circles, kept on having little dizzy spells and very serious epilepsy. I put him on to this formula, Superfit 2 Calm, and Apple Calm, which is one of our special care formulas, very important, beautiful Apple Calm, to support the eliminate and help elimination of these chemicals at birth, and to help little children with serious autistic tendencies and special needs. And this little boy had been so seriously ill with his fits. He'd been having grand mal regularly, and medication that the doctors had put him on had caused him to become cyanotic. So they were terrified. They didn't know what to do. He died, and then they'd shaken him and brought him back to life. And they had to take him off the medication because it was just simply too harmful. And they came to see me, and I put him on to this combination of Superfit 2 and Apple Calm. And the following day, apparently he had 20 petit mal, gentle little fits. The following day after that, he had about 10. The following day after that, he had none, and then no more fits. No more fits. And then just before Christmas Eve, she rang me in floods of tears, petrified, upset, terrified, and said, my little girl has found the bottle and has drunk all the pills, eaten all the pills, and I'm desperate. What am I going to do? Well, they were in England. I was in Jersey. There was no shops open. There was no post. I didn't know what to say. I just simply said, are there any pills left at all? And she said, yes, there's about 2 little pills at the bottom of the bottle. And I said, go and get some water, fill up the bottle with water, and then every time give it a jolly good shake, 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 and bang it and smack it and tap it, and really try to activate it, and that should help. Well, it wasn't that good. It didn't help that much. What happened then was that the child started having petit mal again. That was after 2 months of no fits at all. And then, of course, We sent them a package of about 6 remedies. I said, hide them around the house so this doesn't happen again. And shortly after that, this little boy stopped gnawing his hands, stopped fitting. And then the greatest and the most wonderful, wonderful experience of my life was when he walked into the clinic and said, Diana. And it just literally broke my heart. And I realized, you know, just, wow, this is what it's all about, helping these incredible little children, working with our little children. But of course, this formula is not just for little children, it's for all of us. Whenever there is a toxic thought, remember that thoughts can be toxic as well. Aggression and destruction, disturbance, loss of assets, terrified and worried, loss of home, stressful, not sleeping, anxious, broken. And people are very broken in modern society, struggling to pay their bills, struggling to keep their children fed. All of these things, they matter so very much. And we find that this formula has become incredibly important recently, never more so than as a support for the current circumstances. So we love this formula. It is probably one of the most popular of all the tree formulas, most needed, let's put it that way, although it's certainly by no means the most important. So a really, really beautiful, beautiful formula from the eucalyptus, the Australian tree. We call this the Australian tree, relating also to Heart Power 2, which is called Spiritual Calm. So we have Special Care Apple Calm, Superfit 2 Calm, Heart Power 2 Spiritual Calm, and Flower Formula 3, which is also called Calm as well, Pink Camellia. A very calming and important formula. So let us look at our stunningly beautiful Chinese tree, the beautiful, beautiful magnolia. Superfit 3 Relax, 423 nanometers, is violet. Absolutely, wow. I mean, you know, the magnolia is just such a beautiful, beautiful tree, and grandiflora. Now, it's an interesting story about the seed pod of the magnolia tree. This extraordinary seed pod looks exactly like the spinal cord and the pons viroli. And I've always looked at it and thought, it's like a signature. And then I read this phenomenally interesting article about the extracts of the the extracts of the magnolia seed pod being a very, very important healing for brain damage for the spinal cord, people paralyzed, people with spinal cord imbalances, and supporting the pons viroli. And I thought, we already know that. And this is exactly why this is such a valuable formula. Remember that all the information about 423 nanometers is actually with our Flower Formula 4, our thistle formula, which is our beautiful, beautiful violet thistle formula, predominantly for the relationship with our fathers. This exquisite strength of the powerful, you know, noble daddy who provides for the family and is the loving protector. And it's just a very, very powerful, you know, the male energy of the world, the yang energy, incredibly important to love and respect our male children, our boy children, who grew up into fine, decent young men, and then have families of their own and become fathers in their own right. And it's terribly, terribly important energy. The circadian rhythm is intriguing because the circadian rhythm is our ability to live comfortably within our lives, sleeping and waking, and again, the rhythm of day and night. And again, there is a very important hormone that is produced in the daylight, which is serotonin, and is absolutely one of the key brain hormones. Now, serotonin is interesting because it's like the hubcap of the brain hormone pathway. And it's like a Catherine wheel. It spins out and it activates histamine, it activates encephalin, activates stimulant interferon, endorphin, the whole sort of scenario, angiotensin. But above all, it activates this very, very interesting hormone called brain substance P factor. And brain substance P factor is absolutely fascinating because it is the factor that actually brings us out of stress. Many times people are not sleeping well because they're stressed, they're worried, they're anxious, they're in an heightened adrenal system where they can't relax. And so the problem is that they go to sleep and then they wake up and then they can't go back to sleep again. Well, I love this formula more than you can possibly know. I have it beside my bed, and whenever I'm thinking about all the things I've got to do tomorrow, and I can't sleep, or I wake up in the middle of the night, and I think, oh dear, you know, the alarm clock's going to go in 3 hours. If you take one of these formulas, it helps you to sleep peacefully and wake up comfortably, and it does not make you feel drowsy. It is not like a sleeping pill. And again, it's also really, really helpful because many, many, many young people today, move over. She's in anyway, we've got a visitor here. The truth is that the circadian rhythm and peaceful sleep and serotonin is incredibly important for our health. People who don't sleep, who can't sleep, who have a terrible time trying to sleep often end up very, very ill indeed, because it opens up the doorway to some quite serious brain trauma, quite serious Alzheimer's, and again, the whole cascade of the tree formula linked with our beautiful, extraordinarily powerful heart power formula, heart power 2. So this is a really, really interesting formula in terms of calming and soothing and helping people to cope with their environment. And yet again, many, many people who have these complications are taking these antidepressants, many of which are addictive. Very, very difficult to get rid of these things. And intriguingly enough, one of the things that we really, really need is support that does something in a gentle way without hurting, but at the same time helps to re-educate the brain to be stable. So one of the biggest problems with these antidepressants, that there's so many of them, and there's so many different trade names for the same drug, they are addictive. So to be able to get rid of that addiction by helping people to relax to such a degree that they no longer need their drugs, this is key, this is valuable. Now we've got this beautiful blue formula. It's called Immunity, and it's the redwood, this beautiful tree. I mean, oh my God, it's the tallest tree in the world. And recently there was this article about the tallest redwood tree in the world, which was very, very old and extremely tall. They are stunning. And this is the tree from Canada, the incredible North American redwood. Beautiful, beautiful tree. And it has a very interesting bark, which almost looks indigo. I love this formula very much indeed. It's exceptionally valuable. Immunity, Superfit 4, Immunity, which is a little bit of a play on words, and I think you probably understand exactly what it means. It is blue, and we have 5 blue formulas. So we frequently use Superfit 4 Immunity alongside one of those 5 indigo and 1 blue formula. So for example, if we need this formula to support the mouth and the turmoil that we talk about with flower formula 5, this incredibly difficult situation when people become hot and angry and bothered and confused, and little children, particularly teething babies, happy one minute and screaming their little heads off the next. A very, very wonderful formula. And again, if you use Flower Formula 5 together with Superfit 4, it creates this amazing, amazing, heightened support for the energetic imbalance. We were talking about children who have lost their confidence, who've been bullied, hurt, inappropriately abused, not believed in or hurt or teased in the playground, bullied. Flower Formula 6 for Celia. It's really, really interesting how important that formula number 6 is. But to make it even more powerful, we can combine it with our Superfit 4 immune tea. Likewise, our Flower Formula 7 orchid formula for the support of the auditory pathway, the balance, the missions to be fulfilled. The opposite of frustration is fulfillment. And again, this exquisitely powerful orchid formula, which has a signature. It looks like an insect. And we know that the historical healing power of the orchids for malaria, dengue fever, yellow fever, and these tropical disorders. So it's hardly surprising that our beautiful orchid formula has such an impact to support tropical disorders, as well as limes and midges and mosquito bites and whatever insect-related parasitic disorders. Flower Formula 7, incredibly powerful. But it has another factor to it, which is really important, and that is that Flower Formula 7 supports the macrophage system. Now, the macrophage system is the internal immune system, and we have the lungs, the alveolar macrophage system, we have the spleen, the reticular endothelial system, the thymus gland, of course, the reticular endothelial system of the thymus are totally our immune system. And again, we know that histamine, which is supported by this formula, is to support against anaphylactic reactions and anaphylactic shock when coming into contact with something toxic. And again, even sometimes there is toxic shock from tampons, for example. So that this is a really, really amazingly important formula for anaphylaxis, together with Flower Formula 7. We looked at Flower Formula 8, Uplift, Rosemary formula as being a formula of great requirement to uplift people when they're very depressed. And again, there was a quality that formula had as an antidote quality, which was the ability to eliminate anesthetic and hydrochloride drugs. And so combined with Superfit 4, even more powerful. And then, of course, our one beautiful light blue formula, Flower Formula 9, Bluebell, which talks about having faith and trusting, knowing that there'll always be help when you pray, when you ask for help, it will always come. And then the rather portentous little statement, consider the possibility that we learn from experiences, the negative experiences that we learn from them. They teach us how to move forward, how to learn. And this, I suppose, to a certain extent, mimics this concept that we produce antibodies against viruses and bacteria in order to maintain our ability to survive. Our survival depends on this. So to create an antibody, we have to come into contact sometimes with the negative force of the virus or the bacteria in order to create our healing powers. And again, we talked a little bit about Flower Formula 7, the name of Flower Formula 7 being cool, calm, which is the fever. And so we never take somebody dramatically out of a fever, but we enable them to go through that healing process far more quickly. So this is why this Superfit formula is probably extraordinarily important. It takes a very, very interesting place to support emotions. And remember that in Chinese medicine, we always talk about his emotions being, or viruses being emotional opportunists. So, they hit us when we're vulnerable, when we're emotional. This is our blue formula, is a very emotional formula. Our previous formulas, the three formulas, 1, 2, and 3, are the formulas for the spiritual pathway, but this is our emotional pathway. So when we say that it linked with thymus, teeth, immune system, autonomic nervous system, probiotic, the sinuses, the mastoids, the cranial nerves, the tonsils, please remember that that's just the physical link with a powerful, aggressive, toxic shock of emotions. You see, emotions can be just as toxic as physical poisons. So cruelty, aggression, hurt, grief, sorrow, all these emotions that are so negative can be so toxic.